Sırada şehirlerde dijital teknoloji kullanımı açısından öne çıkan ana trendler var ve bu trendlerin ortaya çıkışına etki eden ve şekillendiren faktörler neler? Onları sorgulayacağız. Gayrimenkul sektöründeki kurumların yenilikçiliği nasıl kullanabilecekleri, Proptech vaka analizleri ve yenilikçiliği nasıl ele almalı rehberini dinlemek üzere Concrete VC Yatırım OrtağıAdam Burstow'u çağıracağım. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Adam Burstow.
Hello. I was walking around the old town earlier. It's my first time to Istanbul. Mete very kindly gave me a lift over. I walked up to Hagia Sophia, walked across to the Grand Bazaar, and then got a tram back round to the hotel. And as I did that, it got me thinking about the relationship between technology and the cities. Because as I walked round, I saw all generations of technologies from early construction technologies such as the arch and the dome, and then through every layer of technology that's been layered into cities in the last 5,000 years, from water and sewerage, electricity, telecommunications, cars, trams, trains. Cities have always been reliant on technology in order to change and develop. So as I talk about digital technology and the city and real estate today, we're just looking at the next trend of technology. And I think it's important to remember that. Some of these technologies, the impact is very immediate and obvious, and other technologies have acted in a variety of ways, and it can be hard to tell. I've been looking very closely at digital and real estate trends in the city, and that's going to be my subject today. I'm going to start off by talking about 12 key urban technology trends, but then I'm going to go on to talk about what drives them. We did some research with the Urban Land Institute in the UK, looking at a range of tech trends. So in terms of the agenda today, I'm going to start with that, but then I'm going to dig a bit deeper and look about what's driving them. What are the, not just the technologies, but the organising models that are enabling those trends to get traction. Then I'm going to go on to look at the inputs of that on the real estate industry, and we'll start to see examples of how the industry is responding to those and the way in which the industry is starting to develop new models of its own. Underlying that, often we see new approaches to innovation. So I'm going to talk about the importance of innovation, and I'm going to give examples of where real estate businesses are changing the way in which they think about digital and approach their own innovation playbook. As I go through, I'll try and give examples and case studies. If we start with the key urban land technology trends, we identified 12. I haven't got time to go through them in any depth, but I will just briefly introduce them. They fall into 4 groups. So the first is around traditional real estate sectors. So you've got future of work, things like co-working products, and the relationship between that and office space. Also in this space, you obviously have digital retail, where we've seen very strong implications of e-commerce on the traditional retail environment in changes in the way that supply chains work. And also then manufacturing and distribution. We've seen less impact there, but we can see the potential in the future, for example, for 3D printing to change the way in which production and distribution might work globally. We also looked at cities. We talked about smart cities and the way in which cities can work better as machines. More than half of the world's population now lives in cities, and in order to continue the expected growth, they need to become denser. As people live ever closer together, the machinery of the city and the services that citizens get needs to become ever more effective. We're also, within the city space, looking at digital twins and the way in which virtual representations of city models can help cities work more effectively. Also transport, we looked at transport as a service and the increasing sharing of transport infrastructure. You obviously have existing public transport systems, but how that can be augmented, for example, with autonomous cars and minibuses, bicycles, scooters. I saw some in Istanbul today. Next is buildings, and this fundamentally comes down to how buildings are built, So modern methods of construction, for example, modular construction and off-site assembly of components, and the effect of that on the construction site itself. And also then how buildings actually operate and the sustainability of that and the efficiency. Finally, we looked at people, and we identified a number of interesting trends there. One's tribalization. Often, historically in cities, place would delineate tribe or groups of people, but increasingly you're seeing social media and other factors making digital places an important center in which tribes gather, which potentially means that they can disperse physically around the city. Also, in respect of people, we looked at what a wonderful day. That's looking at health and the quantified self and how improved monitoring for health bands or whatever can help us improve our health and manage health. Other areas we looked at in respect of people included the sharing economy, which was just mentioned earlier. More and more assets now are shared. That's part of the process by which cities can get more dense. So we looked at these range of technologies, but what's actually driving, we looked at those trends, but what's actually driving them is a series of factors. It's underlying technologies, but also it's new business operating models and new products that are applying these technologies. If we start with the technologies that we saw, you've got an underlying set of technologies, foundations, so social, mobile, big data, and cloud, which 10 years ago we had hardly heard of, and now we are developing our understanding of those. But increasingly we're seeing another wave of technologies come in on top of those, and we identified 5 that we thought were particularly relevant. Firstly, Internet of Things. So more and more everything, be it a building or a car or a fridge or whatever, has its own monitoring and control technology built in it. Latest statistics, there's something like 30 billion IoT devices in the world, and that will be a continuing trend. Next is physical and smart machines. A really obvious one for that, I think, is the autonomous car. An autonomous car is essentially a robot. And again, we're projecting significant growth in that globally, but not just at that level. I think we will also start to see robots on the sidewalks, and we'll start to have robots in the home. At the moment, we interact through a lot of our technology through smartphones, and we might find that robots start to replace that. We have cognitive machines. In the future, in the world of science fiction, the whole city will be controlled by a central brain that balances everything up and removes all the traffic jams. I think that's quite a long way off, but you are starting to see very specific applications of AI. So, for example, robotic process automation. I was speaking to a contact of mine in CBRE about the work they've done to automate leases and automate lease management, so lease abstraction and management, and those processes are becoming ever more efficient. Additive manufacturing, so that's printing machines that use either polymers or metal to make new components. Has obvious applications to building construction and maintenance. And then finally, immersive technologies, so augmented and virtual reality. You're seeing a number of big players in that market. You have Facebook with Oculus, you have HoloLens, you've got the Microsoft platform, and I think it's fairly intuitive that this has the potential to change the nature of place over time, that each physical place will start to have its augmented and virtual equivalent, and that the relationships between those will start to change, and we'll start to see new things happening. Of course, we also looked at some technologies for the future, like blockchain, for example. Of course, these things don't all happen in separate silos. They start to interact. A business model like Uber needs social media, mobile, cloud computing, big data, or it can't work. As these new technologies emerge, they will increasingly combine with each other to create new possibilities and ideas that are hard to imagine at the moment. It's not just the technologies themselves that change. Also, we see changes in other areas. So one is business models, and an obvious example we'll all know is Airbnb. Fundamentally, that's a new business model. It's bringing in a new, previously untapped source of supply of lodgings, and rooms, and bringing that together with an entire customer-facing model to bring the two together. I think, whilst it's a well-known example, it's interesting now, in the last year that I could get stats last year, 2018, that Airbnb accounted for 20% of US lodging night rentals. And so as an impact on the market, that business model has had a very substantial impact. Obviously, in office, we see WeWork, for example, and co-working. Residential, we see co-living business models. We're also seeing new operating models. Increasingly, real estate businesses are thinking about how they operate, and we're seeing platforms emerge to help control the processes in those, and also the marketplaces that are involved. So, for example, in construction, you have Honest Buildings, which controls a tendering process in certain cities, and also establishes a new marketplace for that. In investment, you've got companies like Juniper Square, and on transactions, VTS, which was mentioned earlier, is growing significantly. I'm trying to remember what that now has 10 billion square feet on its platform. It's got a valuation of $1 billion US, as was discussed, and that's also now developing its own online marketplace, Truva, which has the potential to significantly disrupt the broker market. We're also seeing actual physical products, and each of the big tech players has got an interest in these. So for Apple, you have HomeKit and Siri. For Google, you have the Nest product, which you see there. You've got Amazon with Echo and Alexa. Microsoft Cortana is another home management platform. On the face of it, that won't be that disruptive to the real estate industry. But for me, it's a sign of things to come that the big tech players are starting to get involved in the retail space. And we're seeing other deeper examples of that involvement. So, for example, last year, Amazon invested in a modular housing company. I think their ambitions in terms of platform, I could very possibly see extend to the home, not just to tech platforms. Google's Sidewalk Labs, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, had approval to go to the next stage of their waterfront Toronto development. This is a pilot 12-acre, so 5-hectare phase of a much bigger potential program looking to automate the city and aspects of the way the city works. Been hugely controversial in Toronto. There have been public, citizen bodies have formed to try and block it, and it's a good example of the tensions between technology and society. Apple are known to be working on cars, and it'd be interesting to think how far they might go in apartments. Imagine the perfect sort of Apple 16 square meter modular living pod that you can order online for $80,000 and gets dropped where you want it. There's a lot of potential future products here which will be very different from what we're used to. What might the impact of all of this be on the real estate industry? I think my overall message is that the timing and impact of this is uncertain. We can look to some other industries to get an idea of what might happen though. So in the music industry, in 2003 when iTunes came out, 750 million CDs were shipped. Recently it's under 50 million. So 95% of that market was fundamentally transformed by that technology. But not every technology has that level of impact in the market. In film and TV, US viewing hours now, Netflix is around 10% of viewing hours, but there's still a very significant percentage viewed through traditional channels. Automotive, I talked about. When you come to the real estate industry, it seems to me we come back to this question, will it be a single meteor strike of disruption or a broader network of a meteor shower, if you like, of individual disruptions, and then how will they start to add up into that broader overall disruption? Because if Airbnb has a 20% US market share, something like WeWork, in fact, has a much smaller market share. So, for example, about 3% of the San Francisco office market, and the disruption isn't as pronounced. We're starting to see the industry produce some interesting responses. And increasingly, I think the industry is recognizing that it can't just focus on a product. It needs to step back and look at its operating model and its business model. There's a real estate company in the Netherlands called OVG Real Estate that developed this building. It's called The Edge. That, at the time it was built, it was rated as the greenest, most intelligent building in the world. It's occupied by Deloitte. Through that, OVG Real Estate realized that they needed to extend their product. This has a highly advanced connectivity platform, a lot of monitoring of activity, and all of these services are used by the real estate company, by the customer, the corporate, the occupiers, but also by the people in the building. And OVG have now renamed themselves Edge Technologies. The profile of people they employ has changed, and they fundamentally changed not just their core product, but their operating and business model that surrounds that. What that really is an example of innovation. And I found another example, a company that I know, which I thought is quite an interesting case study on this, called Plug and Play. Innovation fundamentally is the process by which corporates bring together ideas and technologies and use them to create new products that deliver new value to your customers and therefore value and growth to you as an organization. Innovation is a process that drives through that. It needs two key things internally. So it needs investment, it needs money, and it needs capabilities. And increasingly real estate organizations are looking at how they build up that investment and the capabilities. It's really important, not least because a lot of your competitors, the tech industry, and increasingly what you might think of as an innovation industry of consultants and specialists are all starting to bring new ideas to bear on this. So Plug and Play was a real estate business based in Silicon Valley. They had, for example, they had a building, it's called the Lucky Building in Palo Alto, which hosted, amongst other startups, Google, Logitech, and PayPal when they had less than 20 employees. The real estate business started doing equity for rent type deals, and as you might imagine, saw huge returns from some of these startups that started in their space. It's now become a tech investment business. It accelerated about 1,100 startups. I've been to it, its huge sort of operating center in Silicon Valley, and it invests in around 200 or 300 a year. So it's an example of how a real estate business has sort of developed itself into an innovation organization. And it's not just real estate businesses. We're also seeing that with service providers as well. So if you take the example of JLL, JLL created JLL Spark, which was mentioned earlier, and more recently rolled that into JLL Technologies, which is becomes, if you like, the vessel through which digital products are developed within JLL. The people that run that now have a seat on JLL's executive board globally. So you're starting to see a very different structures emerging to deal with technology within real estate organizations. I was part of a project that spoke to about 40 companies earlier in the year, including about 25 real estate companies, asking them how they approached innovation. And they came up with a number of common themes. Firstly, was this idea of products. A focus on investing in products and then thinking about the operating and business model that underlies it. The next one then was the product pipeline. Tech investing is not like real estate investing. If you invest in a building, you expect it to be there and worth something in 3 years' time. Tech investing is not like that. 60% of your investments might well be failures. That requires a cultural shift. You invest money in a pipeline where some of your products just disappear from that pipeline. Others of them perhaps become runaway successes. And changing that culture is important. You then have the playbook, how you go about investing. Do you build your own technology? Do you buy tech companies? Do you partner? Do you develop your own in-house digital team? Perhaps you establish a corporate ventures unit. And we saw examples of where corporates are actually investing with external funds as well. Each corporate has to make its own decisions about how it's going to approach innovation. And we see all sorts of examples across the spectrum. And finally, platform. Excuse me. It's very important that organizations have the right platform on which they're basing these investments. The most important of those is a clear understanding of the strategic theme. Why is it that you're investing in technology? It's very easy to just ship money into the area. The best example we spoke to was a global logistics business with a vast amount of square feet globally. It identified two things it wanted to focus on: reducing operating costs and providing value-add logistics services within warehouses. As it invests in individual corporates, individual tech startups, they all focus on those two strategic themes. And I'd encourage everyone to think, well, what are my strategic themes? So, if we come to a summary of that, I think 2 points. The first thing, digital disruption will impact the real estate industry, but I don't think that it's going to be any one particular clear and obvious impact. I think the extent and timing are uncertain. And they're uncertain in all sorts of factors, but certainly by organisation, by market, by geography, and by the type of service. And that leads to my second point. I think every real estate organisation needs to develop its own view of how digital will disrupt it as a business, and then develop its own innovation playbook. If we come back to me wandering around Istanbul, Old Town earlier today, you think about the potential for these new technologies to change and improve the city. I think there's a lot of value there for real estate organisations, and also I think potentially social value and broader value. So if there's a particular message to conclude with, it's that these technologies are brilliant technologies and really do have the potential for us all to work together to change cities for good for the people that live and work and play in them. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So there is disruption everywhere, and we
yes.
have to be prepared.
Yes, but we don't quite know exactly what or when.
Well,
that's the challenge.
Disruption. We don't know what's coming afterwards.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.